Hey guys, tonight we're beginning the complete story of ancient Egypt, one of the longest-lasting and most mysterious civilizations in human history. If you enjoy relaxing history videos like this, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and settle in as we travel back more than 5,000 years to the banks of the Nile, long before Greece became famous or Rome ruled an empire. Egypt was already flourishing beside a river that made life possible. In the middle of a vast desert, every year the Nile overflowed its banks, leaving behind rich black soil that allowed farmers to grow wheat, barley, vegetables, and flax. While surrounding lands remained dry and unforgiving, the people of Egypt believed the river was a precious gift from the gods. Villages slowly grew into towns, and towns became powerful. Cities connected by boats sailing up and down the Nile. Children learned to fish before they could write. Farmers watched the seasons carefully, and traders carried goods between distant settlements. The rhythm of life depended entirely on the river, whose waters determined whether families would enjoy abundance or struggle through difficult times. As generations passed, local rulers united different regions into a single kingdom under one powerful king known as the Pharaoh. To the Egyptian people, the Pharaoh was far more than a ruler. He was believed to stand between humanity and the gods, responsible for keeping order throughout the land. His commands shaped everything from farming and construction to religion and law. Around him worked countless officials, priests, architects, soldiers, and skilled scribes who carefully recorded taxes, harvests, and royal achievements using beautiful hieroglyphs carved into stone and painted onto papyrus. Massive building projects soon transformed Egypt into one of the most impressive civilizations the ancient world had ever seen. Gigantic temples rose beside the Nile, while enormous statues watched silently over cities filled with craftsmen, merchants, and ordinary families. But perhaps nothing represented Egyptian ambition more than the Great Pyramids, incredible monuments that still stand thousands of years later, reminding the modern world of a civilization whose greatest mysteries are yet to come. The pyramids did not appear overnight, nor were they built with magic, as many legends later claimed. Their construction required remarkable organization, careful planning, and the labor of thousands of skilled workers. During the months when the Nile flooded nearby fields, many farmers temporarily joined royal building projects, receiving food, clothing, and shelter in return. Teams of stonecutters carved enormous limestone blocks from nearby quarries, while others transported them across the river on large wooden boats. Ramps of mud, brick, and stone allowed workers to slowly pull each block into place using ropes, sledges, and incredible teamwork. Every section had to be measured with astonishing precision because even a small mistake could threaten the stability of the entire structure. Architects studied the stars to align the pyramids almost perfectly with the cardinal directions, demonstrating a level of engineering that still amazes researchers today. Around these monuments, entire communities sprang to life. Bakers prepared thousands of loaves each day. Brewers produced beer that was safer to drink than untreated water, and physicians treated injured laborers using surprisingly advanced medical knowledge for the time. Nearby workshops crafted tools from copper, while carpenters repaired sledges and boats that constantly wore out under heavy loads. Contrary to popular myths, many of these workers were respected laborers rather than chained slaves. Their names, homes, and even their graves have been discovered by archaeologists, revealing people who took pride in helping create monuments that honored their king and secured his journey into the afterlife. For the Egyptians, death was never viewed as an ending. Instead, it marked the beginning of another existence where the soul continued its journey. That belief influenced nearly every part of daily life, from religious ceremonies to the design of magnificent tombs filled with treasures. Food, furniture, clothing, and carefully painted scenes intended to serve the deceased forever. Inside the tombs, artists painted colorful scenes showing fields, rivers, servants, musicians, and family gatherings, because they believed these images would come to life in the world beyond. Priests performed sacred rituals while reciting prayers that asked the gods to protect the soul on its dangerous journey. One of the most important moments came during the Judgment of the Dead, when the heart of the deceased was said to be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and justice. If a person's heart remained light and free from wrongdoing, they could enter a peaceful paradise where food was plentiful and loved ones waited. If it was heavy with lies or cruelty, the soul faced a terrifying fate and disappeared forever. To prepare for eternity, the body was carefully preserved through the process we now call mummification. Skilled embalmers removed organs, dried the body with natural salt called natron, wrapped it in hundreds of linen strips, and placed protective amulets between the layers. Each step followed traditions that had been perfected over centuries. Wealthy nobles could afford elaborate burials with golden masks, carved coffins, and richly decorated chambers, while ordinary farmers received much simpler ceremonies, yet many still hoped the gods would recognize their devotion. Religion shaped every season of Egyptian life. Magnificent temples echoed with prayers offered to Ra, the sun god whose daily journey across the sky symbolized the triumph of light over darkness. Along the Nile, priests cared for sacred statues, burned fragrant incense, and organized grand festivals, where music, dancing, and processions filled the streets. During these celebrations, ordinary people caught rare glimpses of statues, normally hidden deep inside temple sanctuaries. The Egyptians believed that as long as the gods were honored with respect and generous offerings, the Nile would continue to flood, crops would grow, and the kingdom would remain strong. Their faith was woven into every sunrise, every harvest, and every stone they placed upon the land, creating a civilization whose spiritual traditions became just as legendary as its towering monuments. Not every Egyptian spent life building monuments or serving inside magnificent temples. The vast majority were farmers whose daily routines kept the kingdom alive. Before sunrise, families walked into the fertile fields carrying wooden plows pulled by oxen. They planted wheat, barley, onions, beans, and flax, carefully watching the level of the Nile, because every harvest depended on its annual flood. Children learned practical skills from an early age, helping gather crops, feed animals, and repair irrigation canals that carried precious water across the land. Women managed households, baked bread, brewed beer, spun linen into fine cloth, and often joined in farming during busy seasons. Markets filled with the sounds of merchants bargaining over fish, pottery, baskets, perfumes, jewelry, and fresh vegetables brought from nearby villages. Boats crowded the Nile each day, transporting grain, stone, timber, and luxury goods between distant cities. Since roads through the desert were difficult and dangerous, the river served as Egypt's greatest highway. Skilled craftsmen gained respect for creating elegant furniture, colorful glass, gold jewelry, and statues that decorated homes and temples alike. Scribes occupied one of the highest positions outside the royal family because very few people could read and write. Years of training allowed them to master hundreds of hieroglyphic symbols, making them essential for recording taxes, legal agreements, religious texts, and royal decrees. Parents often dreamed that their sons would become scribes instead of laborers because the profession offered comfort, influence, and steady work. Even so, life remained uncertain. Drought, disease, or poor floods could threaten entire communities, reminding everyone that prosperity depended on nature as much as human effort. Despite these hardships, the Egyptians celebrated life with music, dancing, storytelling, board games, and colorful festivals that brought neighbors together. Their homes were usually simple mud brick buildings designed to stay cool beneath the hot sun, while evenings often ended with families sharing bread, vegetables, dates, and beer as the last golden light disappeared behind the western desert. The direction they believed led toward the mysterious land of the dead. As the centuries passed, Egypt experienced periods of extraordinary strength under ambitious pharaohs who expanded the kingdom far beyond the Nile Valley. Soldiers marched into neighboring lands, bringing back valuable resources, livestock, precious metals, exotic animals, and skilled craftsmen from distant regions. Trade routes stretched across deserts and seas, connecting Egypt with Nubia, the Levant, and lands farther away than most people could imagine. Ships returned loaded with cedar wood, incense, ivory, ebony, copper, and rare gemstones that decorated temples and royal palaces. Among Egypt's greatest rulers was Ramesses II, remembered for his enormous building projects and countless statues carved in his likeness. His temples at Abu Simbel were designed so that sunlight reached the inner sanctuary on special days each year, a remarkable achievement that reflected both architectural skill and religious symbolism. Yet not every ruler followed the traditions of those before them. Pharaoh Akhenaten shocked the kingdom by attempting to replace the worship of many gods with devotion to a single sun disk known as Aten. Temples dedicated to ancient gods were abandoned. Priests lost much of their influence, and a completely new capital city was built in the desert. Many Egyptians struggled to accept these dramatic changes because their beliefs had remained stable for generations. After Akhenaten's death, the old religion quickly returned, and much of his legacy was deliberately erased from monuments and official records. His young successor, Tutankhamun, restored the traditional gods and reopened temples throughout the kingdom. Although he ruled for only a short time, his nearly untouched tomb, discovered thousands of years later, became one of archaeology's greatest treasures. Filled with golden furniture, chariots, jewelry, weapons, and the famous gold burial mask, it offered an astonishing glimpse into the wealth and artistry of ancient Egypt. These remarkable discoveries revealed not only the luxury of royal life, but also the deep belief that everything needed in this world would also be needed in the next. A belief that shaped Egyptian civilization from its earliest beginnings until its final days. Despite its incredible wealth and long periods of stability, Egypt was never completely free from hardship. Powerful kingdoms rose around its borders, and each new generation faced challenges that tested the strength of the pharaohs. Sometimes weak rulers struggled to control distant provinces, allowing local governors to gain influence for themselves. During certain periods, foreign armies crossed into Egyptian territory, bringing unfamiliar weapons, customs, and ideas. One of the most significant changes came with the arrival of the Hyksos, who introduced horse-drawn chariots and more advanced bronze weapons. At first, the Egyptians were unable to stop them, and parts of the kingdom fell under foreign control. Yet this difficult era inspired future rulers to strengthen their military. When Egyptian kings finally drove the Hyksos from the land, they transformed Egypt into a far more powerful empire than it had ever been before. Generals led disciplined armies beyond the traditional borders, securing trade routes and protecting valuable resources. However, no empire lasts forever. Over the centuries, repeated invasions, internal conflicts, and changing trade networks slowly weakened the kingdom. Assyrians, Persians, and eventually the armies of Alexander the Great entered Egypt, each leaving their own mark on its history. After Alexander's death, one of his generals founded the Ptolemaic dynasty, whose rulers adopted many Egyptian traditions while also introducing Greek language, architecture, and learning. Their magnificent capital, Alexandria, became one of the greatest centers of knowledge in the ancient world, home to scholars, inventors, and the legendary Library of Alexandria. The dynasty's final ruler, Cleopatra VII, became famous not only for her intelligence and political skill, but also for her desperate attempts to preserve Egypt's independence as the growing power of Rome surrounded her kingdom. When Cleopatra's reign came to an end, Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire, closing the final chapter of a civilization that had endured for more than 3,000 years. Even though its pharaohs disappeared and its temples gradually fell silent, the legacy of ancient Egypt never truly vanished, continuing to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and travelers who still stand in awe beneath the shadows of its timeless monuments. For many centuries after the fall of the pharaohs, the great temples slowly emptied, the royal palaces crumbled, and drifting desert sand covered statues that had once been polished to shine beneath the Egyptian sun. Villages changed, languages evolved, and new religions spread across the land, yet the pyramids remained standing as silent witnesses to thousands of years of human history. Travelers from distant countries looked upon these enormous monuments with amazement, wondering how ancient builders had raised stones weighing several tons. Without modern machines, stories filled with mystery began to spread, and over time, many people imagined that supernatural forces or forgotten civilizations must have helped create them. The truth, however, proved even more impressive. Archaeologists uncovered workers' villages, tools, unfinished statues, and countless written records showing the remarkable organization, patience, and skill of ordinary men and women who dedicated their lives to these extraordinary projects. Every discovery revealed another piece of a civilization that valued knowledge, order, and careful planning. Hieroglyphs carved into temple walls remained unreadable for us centuries until the discovery of the Rosetta. Stone gave scholars the key they needed to understand the ancient language once again. Suddenly, the voices of priests, kings, scribes, and ordinary Egyptians could be heard across thousands of years through inscriptions, letters, and religious texts. Historians learned about forgotten festivals, military victories, family disputes, medical treatments, and even simple shopping lists, reminding us that the people of ancient Egypt were not so different from us after all. They loved their families, worried about the future, celebrated joyful occasions, and hoped to leave behind a meaningful legacy. Today, millions of visitors continue to travel to Egypt each year, standing before the Great Pyramid, walking through the temples of Luxor and Karnak, or sailing along the same Nile that sustained this remarkable civilization for millennia. Although the world around these monuments has changed beyond recognition, the enduring achievements of ancient Egypt continue to inspire curiosity and admiration, proving that even after thousands of years, the story of the Pharaohs, the Nile, and one of humanity's greatest civilizations is still far from forgotten. Even today, ancient Egypt continues to shape the modern world in ways that many people never realize. Engineers study the precision of its monuments. Doctors admire medical texts that describe broken bones and surgical treatments, while historians continue uncovering forgotten cities buried beneath layers of sand. Archaeologists still make remarkable discoveries every year, finding hidden tombs, painted coffins, temples, and everyday objects that reveal new details about how ordinary Egyptians lived. A simple wooden toy, a child's sandal, or a basket of dried grain can tell as much about the past as the treasures of a king. Modern technology has also transformed our understanding of this civilization. Using satellite images, ground-penetrating radar, and advanced CT scans, researchers can examine ancient mummies without disturbing them, learning about illnesses, diets, injuries, and even family relationships. DNA analysis has begun answering questions that puzzled scholars for generations, while digital reconstructions allow us to imagine what long-lost cities and temples once looked like in their full glory. Despite centuries of exploration, Experts believe that many secrets still remain hidden beneath the Egyptian desert. Entire cemeteries, forgotten settlements, and undiscovered royal tombs may still be waiting to be found. That possibility continues to attract explorers from around the world, each hoping to uncover another piece of humanity's shared history. Perhaps the greatest lesson ancient Egypt leaves behind is not simply its towering pyramids or glittering treasures, but the reminder that every civilization, no matter how powerful, is built by ordinary people working together over countless generations. Farmers planting crops beside the Nile, craftsmen shaping stone, scribes recording history, and families raising children, all played their part in creating a culture that survived for more than 3,000 years. Their voices still echo through carved hieroglyphs and weathered monuments, inviting us to slow down, look back, and appreciate just how extraordinary the distant past truly was. The story of ancient Egypt is not only about kings and pyramids. It is also about time itself. Imagine how many generations were born, lived, and passed away while this civilization continued to thrive. A child born during the construction of the first pyramids would have considered those monuments brand new, while someone living 2,000 years later would have viewed them as unimaginably ancient, just as we do today. To the people of Egypt, history stretched far beyond a single lifetime. They respected the achievements of their ancestors and believed that preserving tradition was one of the greatest responsibilities a person could have. That respect for the past helped keep their culture remarkably stable through changing dynasties and difficult times. Their calendars measured the seasons. Their monuments marked the passage of rulers, and their records carefully documented important events so future generations would remember them. Even the stars above the desert guided their architecture, agriculture, and religious ceremonies, reminding them that human life was connected to a much larger universe. Standing beside the Nile at sunset, an Egyptian farmer would have seen much the same view as his grandfather and great-grandfather before him. The river continued its steady journey north, birds flew across the sky, and the golden light reflected from temple walls just as it had for centuries. While kingdoms elsewhere rose and disappeared, Egypt endured because its people adapted without abandoning the foundations of their society. Today, when we look upon the Great Pyramid or the weathered face of the Sphinx, we are not simply looking at ancient stones. We are looking at the determination, imagination, and patience of countless individuals whose names have long been forgotten, but whose work continues to inspire the entire world. Their civilization reminds us that true greatness is rarely created in a single generation. Instead, it is built slowly, one stone, one harvest, one family, and one lifetime at a time. And although thousands of years separate us from the age of the Pharaohs, their remarkable story still whispers across the desert, inviting every new generation to wonder how such an extraordinary civilization managed to leave a legacy that has outlived almost every empire that came after it. As our journey through ancient Egypt slowly comes to an end, it becomes clear that its greatest achievement was never a single pyramid, temple, or famous ruler. Its true legacy was the civilization itself, one that survived for more than 3,000 years while much of the surrounding world constantly changed. Few societies in human history have endured for so long while preserving such a strong cultural identity. The people who lived along the Nile believed that harmony, balance, and respect for both nature and tradition were essential for a successful life. They celebrated the arrival of each flood, thanked the gods for fertile land, and worked together to prepare for the future. Although they could never have imagined airplanes flying above the pyramids or millions of visitors arriving from every corner of the globe, their creations were built with such care that they continue to inspire awe in the modern age. Every carved hieroglyph, painted wall, and weathered statue tells a quiet story about people who laughed with friends, raised families, worried about poor harvests, celebrated joyful festivals, and dreamed that their names would never be forgotten. In many ways, their hopes were fulfilled beyond anything they could have imagined. Thousands of years after the last pharaoh ruled, school children still learn about their accomplishments. Scientists continue studying their inventions, and travelers stand speechless before monuments that have outlasted earthquakes, wars, and the rise and fall of countless empires. Ancient Egypt reminds us that history is not merely a collection of dates or battles. It is the story of ordinary people whose daily efforts slowly created something extraordinary. Their farms fed cities, their hands shaped stone, their beliefs inspired magnificent works of art, and their determination transformed a narrow strip of land beside the Nile into one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Even now, as the desert wind moves gently across the ancient sands, and the Nile continues its timeless journey toward the sea, the spirit of ancient Egypt seems to linger, quietly reminding us that while every human life is temporary, the ideas, achievements, and stories we leave behind can endure for thousands of years, connecting the distant past with the present in ways that continue to fascinate and inspire us all. Thank you for joining this peaceful journey through the remarkable world of ancient Egypt. And until our next adventure into history, may your evening be calm, your mind at ease, and your rest filled with peaceful dreams. For thousands of years, the sands of Egypt have continued to guard countless mysteries. Beneath quiet deserts lie hidden tombs, forgotten temples, and entire cities that have yet to reveal their stories. Every excavation reminds us that history is never truly finished. A single piece of pottery, a broken statue, or a faded inscription can completely change what we know about the ancient world. Even today, archaeologists begin each season with the hope that the next shovel of sand might uncover something unseen for thousands of years. Some discoveries are spectacular, filled with golden treasures and beautifully painted coffins, while others are surprisingly simple, a child's toy, a farmer's tool, or a handwritten note on a fragment of pottery. Yet each object tells us something valuable about the people who once called Egypt home. Together, these discoveries allow historians to rebuild the lives of millions whose names were never recorded in royal monuments. They remind us that every great civilization depends not only on powerful rulers, but also on ordinary families who worked, learned, loved, and dreamed beside the Nile. The enduring fascination with ancient Egypt also speaks to something deeper within human nature. We are naturally curious about those who came before us, eager to understand how they solved problems, celebrated life, and faced death. The Egyptians left behind more than monuments. They left questions that continue to inspire research and imagination. How many undiscovered chambers remain hidden beneath the pyramids? What forgotten libraries may still rest beneath the desert? Which lost city will become the next great archaeological discovery? These questions encourage new generations of scientists, historians, and explorers to continue searching. While we may never uncover every secret, perhaps that mystery is part of what makes ancient Egypt so unforgettable. Its story stretches across thousands of years, connecting the earliest farmers beside the Nile to the modern travelers who stand in wonder before the same timeless monuments. Few civilizations have left such a lasting mark on architecture, engineering, religion, writing, art, and human imagination. Long after the voices of the pharaohs fell silent, their achievements continued speaking through stone, inviting every generation to pause, reflect, and remember that even the greatest civilizations begin with ordinary people determined to build something that will outlive them. Although many mysteries have been solved, ancient Egypt continues to remind us that history is a living puzzle rather than a finished book. Every generation asks new questions, develops better technology, and discovers details that previous researchers could never have imagined. Scientists now use lasers to map hidden chambers, drones to survey remote ruins, and computer models to recreate temples exactly as they appeared thousands of years ago. These innovations allow us to walk through digital reconstructions of cities where merchants once filled busy marketplaces, and priests welcomed worshippers into towering temples, decorated with brilliant colors. It is easy to forget that the monuments we see today were once covered in vivid red, blue, green, and gold paint, shining brightly beneath the Egyptian sun. Time, wind, and sand slowly faded those colors, leaving behind the pale stone that has become so familiar in modern photographs. Yet in their own age, these buildings must have looked almost unbelievably vibrant. The same can be said for the people themselves. They were not mythical figures living in an impossible world, but ordinary human beings with hopes, fears, ambitions, and responsibilities much like our own. Parents worried about their children's future. Craftsmen took pride in perfecting their work, and travelers looked forward to returning safely home after long journeys along the Nile. Some dreamed of becoming respected scribes. Others hoped for successful harvests, while soldiers wished to return from distant campaigns to embrace their families once again. These deeply human experiences are what make ancient Egypt feel surprisingly familiar despite the enormous distance in time. More than 5,000 years separate us from the civilization's beginnings, yet its story continues to resonate because it reflects universal themes of perseverance, creativity, faith, and the desire to leave behind something meaningful. As long as the pyramids rise above the desert and the Nile continues its ancient journey toward the Mediterranean, the legacy of Egypt will endure, quietly inviting each new generation to look beyond the stones and remember the countless lives that transformed a narrow river valley into one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Even after centuries of study, the greatest gift ancient Egypt offers us may simply be perspective. It reminds us how small a single lifetime is compared with the long journey of human civilization. The children who once played beside the Nile, the craftsmen who carefully polished statues, the farmers who patiently waited for the annual flood, and the scribes who filled endless scrolls with neat rows of hieroglyphs, could never have imagined that people thousands of years in the future would still speak about their world. Yet through their dedication, they achieved exactly that. Their monuments became symbols recognized across the globe. Their inventions influenced later civilizations, and their stories inspired generations of explorers, artists, writers, and scientists. Looking across the desert today, it is easy to focus only on the massive pyramids rising above the sand. But those extraordinary structures represent the work of countless ordinary lives. Every carefully carved stone passed through many hands before reaching its final place. Every temple required architects, engineers, laborers, cooks, physicians, and sailors working together toward a shared goal. It was cooperation, patience, and determination, not miracles, that allowed ancient Egypt to flourish for more than 3 millennia. Perhaps that is why this civilization continues to fascinate us. It proves that remarkable achievements are built slowly over time, through thousands of small efforts that eventually become something unforgettable. Even as modern cities grow and technology changes the world at an astonishing pace, the quiet stones of Egypt remind us that endurance often matters more than speed. Long after powerful kingdoms disappeared and famous rulers were forgotten, the legacy of the Nile continued to inspire wonder. As evening settles over the desert, the warm light slowly fades from the ancient temples. Gentle winds move across the golden sand, and the river flows north exactly as it has for countless generations. The world around it has changed beyond recognition. Yet the timeless rhythm of the Nile remains. It is a peaceful reminder that while civilizations may rise and fall, the stories they leave behind continue to travel across time, waiting for curious minds to discover them again. And with that quiet thought, our long journey through the remarkable world of ancient Egypt gently reaches its final resting place, leaving us with a deeper appreciation for one of humanity's greatest and most enduring civilizations. As the stars slowly appear above the desert and the evening breeze drifts across the timeless waters of the Nile, it is worth imagining what this landscape has witnessed over the last 5,000 years. Countless sunsets have reflected from the sides of the pyramids. Millions of footsteps have echoed through temple courtyards. The voices of priests, merchants, children, soldiers, and travelers have long since faded. Yet the places where they once lived still remain ancient. Egypt teaches us that history is not only preserved in books, but also in rivers, stones, and the memories carried from one generation to the next. The Nile continues to flow just as it did when the first villages appeared along its fertile banks, patiently connecting the distant past with the present. It has seen kingdoms unite and divide, witnessed triumphs and tragedies, and continued its endless journey regardless of who wore the crown. That quiet constancy is perhaps one of the most remarkable lessons Egypt offers us. Human lives are brief, but nature continues its rhythm, inspiring each generation to build, create, and dream. The people of ancient Egypt believed that every action left a lasting mark upon the world. Whether planting a field, carving a statue, teaching a child, or recording history on a sheet of papyrus, they understood that small acts repeated over many years could shape the future in extraordinary ways. Looking back today, we can see they were right. Their civilization left behind achievements that survived wars, earthquakes, floods, and the passing of countless centuries. It influenced architecture, mathematics, astronomy, engineering, medicine, literature, and art in ways that still echo through modern society. Yet perhaps their greatest legacy is the curiosity they continue to inspire. Every visitor who stands before the Great Pyramid, every student who studies hieroglyphs, and every archaeologist who brushes away another handful of sand becomes part of the continuing story of ancient Egypt. The civilization may have ended long ago, but the search to understand it never truly will. Somewhere beneath the endless desert, another hidden chamber may still wait in silence. Another forgotten inscription may hold the answer to a question historians have debated for generations, and perhaps that is the perfect ending for a civilization built upon mystery. Rather than giving us every answer, ancient Egypt leaves us with wonder, inviting us to keep exploring, keep learning, and keep remembering that the greatest stories in history are often those that are never completely finished. As our peaceful journey finally reaches its end, let the image of the calm Nile, the golden desert, and the ancient pyramids remain in your thoughts, a timeless reminder that some stories are powerful enough to outlive thousands of years, continuing to inspire anyone willing to pause, listen, and look back into the distant past. Even if every hidden chamber were discovered tomorrow and every remaining hieroglyph were translated, the fascination of ancient Egypt would almost certainly remain unchanged. That is because its appeal goes beyond mystery alone. It represents one of humanity's earliest demonstrations of what determination, cooperation, and imagination can accomplish over many generations. The Egyptians transformed a narrow ribbon of fertile land, surrounded by endless desert, into a thriving civilization whose influence stretched across continents and across time itself. They observed the movements of the stars, measured the flooding of the Nile with remarkable accuracy, and organized one of the ancient world's most sophisticated governments. Their architects designed structures that continue to challenge modern understanding. while their artists created paintings and sculptures that still communicate emotion thousands of years after they were made. Their physicians recorded treatments for wounds and illnesses. Their scribes preserved laws, stories, and religious beliefs. And their craftsmen produced objects of astonishing beauty using simple tools and incredible patience. Although much of their world has disappeared, their ideas continue to live on through museums, universities, documentaries, and archaeological expeditions that inspire millions of people every year. Standing before the Great Pyramid today, it is impossible not to feel connected to those distant generations who once stood in exactly the same place, gazing at the same monument with the same sense of wonder. The desert wind still moves across the limestone blocks. The sun still rises above the eastern horizon each morning, and the Nile still nourishes the land that gave birth to this extraordinary civilization. Time has changed nearly everything else, yet these timeless rhythms remain. Perhaps that is why ancient Egypt continues to capture our imagination more than almost any other civilization in history. It reminds us that while human lives are temporary, the knowledge we create, the stories we tell, and the things we build with care can endure far beyond our own lifetime. Long after our names are forgotten, our actions may still influence people we will never meet, just as the achievements of the ancient Egyptians continue to inspire us today. As the quiet evening settles over the valley of the Nile and the stars begin shining above the silent pyramids, we can leave this remarkable civilization with a sense of gratitude for the people who came before us. Their curiosity, resilience, and creativity transformed history forever, leaving behind a legacy that continues to invite every generation to pause, reflect, and appreciate the incredible journey of humanity through the ages. As we quietly step away from the world of ancient Egypt, one final thought remains. History often encourages us to remember famous names like Khufu, Hatshepsut, Akhenaten, Tutankhamun, Ramesses II, and Cleopatra, but the civilization they ruled was sustained by millions of ordinary people whose names have been lost to time. There were fishermen casting their nets into the calm waters of the Nile before sunrise, mothers preparing bread for their families, craftsmen patiently carving delicate patterns into stone, and young apprentices carefully learning trades that had been passed from parent to child for generations. There were scribes who spent long days recording harvests with steady hands, doctors who treated broken bones, using knowledge gained through years of observation, and sailors who guided wooden boats along the river carrying grain, papyrus, and precious cargo between distant cities. Each of these people played a small part in building a civilization that would eventually become one of the greatest in human history. Their daily routines may have seemed ordinary to them, yet together those routines created something extraordinary. It is a reminder that history is rarely shaped by a single moment or a single individual. Instead, it is built little by little through patience, cooperation, and the quiet determination of countless lives lived with purpose. When we admire the pyramids today, we are also honoring the anonymous workers who carefully lifted every stone into place. When we study hieroglyphs, we remember the scribes who believed knowledge should be preserved for future generations. When we walk through ancient temples, we follow paths once traveled by people who laughed, celebrated, mourned, and hoped for a better tomorrow, just as we do today. Perhaps that is why ancient Egypt continues to feel so timeless. Beneath all of its magnificent monuments and legendary rulers lies a simple human story, one of families, communities, hard work, faith, and imagination. Thousands of years have passed since the last pharaoh ruled beside the Nile, yet the civilization's greatest message still endures. Human creativity has the power to outlast even the passage of time. Stones may weather, kingdoms may disappear, and languages may change, but the desire to build, to learn, to remember, and to leave the world a little richer than we found it is something shared by every generation. And so, as the gentle waters of the Nile continue their endless journey toward the sea, beneath a sky filled with quiet stars, we leave ancient Egypt behind not as a forgotten chapter of history, but as a lasting reminder that the achievements of the past continue to illuminate the present, encouraging us to look forward with the same curiosity and determination that inspired one of the world's most remarkable civilizations. As our long journey finally draws to a peaceful close, imagine yourself standing on the banks of the Nile just before sunrise. The air is cool, the water moves gently, and the first rays of light slowly begin to illuminate the desert. In the distance, the pyramids rise above the horizon exactly as they have for thousands of years. Birds glide across the river, fishermen quietly prepare their boats, and farmers begin another day in the fertile fields. Although the people who once lived here are gone, the landscape still carries echoes of their world. It is easy to understand why ancient Egypt has fascinated travelers, historians, and dreamers for centuries. There is something deeply calming about a civilization that measured time not in days or months, but in the steady rhythm of the Nile and the endless movement of the stars. The Egyptians believed that balance was the foundation of a good life. They called this principle ma'at, a word representing truth, harmony, justice, and order. They hoped to live honestly, respect their families, honor the gods, and leave behind a life worth remembering. While many of their beliefs belong to a distant age, the values beneath them remain surprisingly familiar. People still search for purpose, peace, and the hope that their lives will matter long after they are gone. Perhaps that is why the story of ancient Egypt never truly grows old. It reminds us that across thousands of years, the human heart has changed far less than we often imagine. We continue to wonder about our place in the world, to admire beauty, to seek knowledge, and to dream about the future while honoring the past. The temples may now stand in silence, the royal palaces may have disappeared, and the voices of the pharaohs may have faded into history. But their civilization still speaks through every carved inscription, every weathered statue, and every stone resting beneath the warm Egyptian sun. As evening once again settles across the desert and the stars appear above the timeless Nile, let your thoughts drift peacefully through this ancient land. Picture the calm river flowing without hurry, the quiet breeze moving across the sand, and the great pyramids watching over the valley just as they have for millennia. Thank you for spending this time exploring one of humanity's greatest civilizations. May the peaceful spirit of ancient Egypt stay with you as you relax, unwind, and gently drift into a restful sleep. Before we leave this ancient world behind completely, there is one last quiet lesson hidden within the story of Egypt. Civilizations are often remembered for their greatest monuments, but monuments alone cannot explain why a culture survives in human memory. Ancient Egypt continues to inspire because it combined practical knowledge with imagination in a way that was truly remarkable. The same people who carefully measured fields after each Nile flood also filled temple walls with beautiful stories about gods, stars, and the journey of the soul. They understood the importance of recording history, preserving knowledge, and passing skills from one generation to the next. Young apprentices learned from experienced masters, and those masters had once learned from the generation before them, creating an unbroken chain of knowledge that lasted for centuries. Even when rulers changed and new dynasties rose to power, many traditions remained the same, giving the civilization an extraordinary sense of continuity. Looking back today, we often focus on the wealth of the pharaohs. Yet the greatest treasure Egypt left behind was not gold. Gold can be melted down or stolen, but knowledge has the power to survive almost anything. The mathematical calculations used by architects, the medical observations written by physicians, the artistic techniques perfected by craftsmen, and the careful records kept by scribes became gifts that outlived the people who created them. Every generation inherited something from the last and added something of its own before passing it forward. In many ways, that is how all human civilization grows. We build upon the discoveries, successes, and even the mistakes of those who came before us. Ancient Egypt reminds us that progress is rarely the work of a single genius or a single ruler. Instead, it is the result of thousands of ordinary people contributing small pieces to a much larger story. As the moon rises above the quiet desert and its pale light gently touches the ancient pyramids, it is comforting to remember that these monuments have watched over countless peaceful nights, just like this one. They have stood through changing seasons, shifting kingdoms and thousands of years of human history without ever leaving their place beside the Nile. Their silent presence reminds us that while time moves endlessly forward, the stories of the past continue to guide, teach, and inspire those willing to listen. And with that final reflection, our peaceful exploration of ancient Egypt reaches its natural conclusion, leaving behind only the quiet image of an ancient river flowing steadily beneath a sky filled with timeless stars. As the final moments of our journey settle into silence, take one more slow look across the ancient landscape. The desert stretches endlessly toward the horizon, its rolling dunes glowing softly beneath the moonlight. The Nile continues its patient journey to the Mediterranean, just as it has since long before the first stones of the pyramids were placed upon the earth. Along its banks, reeds sway gently in the evening breeze, birds rest quietly among the marshes, and the sounds of the busy ancient world fade into peaceful stillness. It is remarkable to think that the same river once reflected the faces of pharaohs, farmers, craftsmen, priests, merchants, and children whose lives have long since passed into history. Each generation believed it was living in the present, never knowing that thousands of years later people around the world would still speak about their civilization with admiration and curiosity. Perhaps that is the greatest wonder of all. The Egyptians built monuments hoping they would last forever, yet it is not only their buildings that survived. Their ideas, their stories, and their determination also endured, crossing countless centuries to reach us today. When we study ancient Egypt, we are reminded that every civilization leaves behind more than ruins. It leaves behind lessons about resilience, creativity, cooperation, and the remarkable things people can accomplish when they work toward a shared purpose. The pyramids remind us of patience. The temples remind us of faith. The hieroglyphs remind us of the importance of preserving knowledge. And the Nile reminds us that life is always moving forward, carrying every generation into the future while quietly honoring those who came before. Tonight, as you allow your thoughts to drift gently away, imagine the stars shining above the Valley of the Kings exactly as they did thousands of years ago. Imagine the warm desert air, the calm river flowing without hurry, and the towering pyramids standing peacefully beneath the night sky. The world has changed beyond recognition since the age of the Pharaohs, yet these timeless scenes remain, offering a quiet sense of comfort and continuity. Thank you for sharing this peaceful journey through one of the most extraordinary civilizations ever to exist. May the calm spirit of the Nile, the quiet strength of the pyramids, and the enduring wisdom of ancient Egypt stay with you as the night grows deeper. Rest well, sleep peacefully, and may your dreams carry you gently through the endless sands of history until the morning light returns once again. For a civilization that ended more than 2,000 years ago, ancient Egypt remains surprisingly alive in our imagination. Its influence can be found in museums filled with carefully preserved artifacts, in books that continue to explore its mysteries, and in the excitement people feel when a new archaeological discovery is announced. Every generation seems to rediscover Egypt in its own way, asking fresh questions and finding new reasons to admire its achievements. Children are often captivated by stories of pyramids and hidden tombs, while historians are fascinated by the remarkable organization that allowed such a long-lasting civilization to flourish. Engineers continue studying ancient construction methods, artists draw inspiration from Egyptian symbolism, and astronomers admire the careful observations of the heavens that guided temples and monuments. Few places in the world have inspired such lasting curiosity across so many different fields of knowledge. Yet, beyond the impressive monuments and famous rulers lies something far more meaningful. Ancient Egypt reminds us that history is ultimately about people. Somewhere along the Nile, a young apprentice once learned to carve stone under the watchful eye of an experienced craftsman. A mother patiently taught her child how to weave linen. A farmer looked toward the sky, hoping the annual flood would arrive at the proper time. A scribe carefully sharpened his reed pen before recording another day's events onto papyrus. None of these individuals could have imagined that thousands of years later their daily lives would help future generations understand an entire civilization. Their names may have disappeared, but the traces of their work survived in walls, tools, pottery, paintings, and written records scattered across the desert. The endurance of Egypt also reminds us that even the greatest civilizations experience change. Dynasties rise, traditions evolve, cities expand, and eventually every society faces challenges that reshape its future. The Egyptians understood this better than we sometimes imagine. They witnessed floods that were too weak, harvests that failed, political struggles, invasions, and periods of uncertainty. Yet they continued rebuilding, adapting, and preserving the values they believed mattered most. Their resilience became one of their greatest strengths. Instead of allowing hardship to erase their culture, they repeatedly found ways to renew it, ensuring that each generation inherited the knowledge of the last. As you picture the quiet banks of the Nile one final time, imagine the first light of dawn slowly touching the tops of the ancient temples. The stars fade one by one, birds begin to sing, and the river continues its endless journey just as it has for thousands of years. In that peaceful moment, it becomes clear that ancient Egypt is more than a chapter in history. It is a reminder that curiosity, creativity, patience, and cooperation can leave a legacy that reaches far beyond a single lifetime. Long after kingdoms disappear and rulers are forgotten, the stories created by ordinary people continue to travel through time, waiting patiently for someone to listen once again. There is one final image that has survived every chapter of Egypt's remarkable story. It is not a king sitting upon a throne or a treasure hidden within a royal tomb. It is the quiet sight of the Nile flowing steadily through the heart of the country, just as it did before the first pyramid was imagined. Generations came and went beside its waters. Children grew into adults, rulers were crowned and buried, temples were built and weathered by time, yet the river continued its endless journey without interruption. That peaceful rhythm became the heartbeat of Egyptian civilization, reminding its people that life was part of a much greater cycle. The floodwaters returned, crops grew, families gathered to celebrate another successful harvest, and the stars once again crossed the clear desert sky. Looking back from the present day, it becomes easier to understand why the Egyptians valued permanence so deeply. They hoped their monuments, stories, and traditions would survive long after they themselves had passed away. In many ways, their wish came true beyond anything they could have imagined. Today, their civilization is remembered not because it conquered the entire world, but because it created beauty, knowledge, and architecture that refused to disappear. Even after thousands of years, people still travel across oceans simply to stand in silence before the pyramids, to walk through temple halls covered with ancient carvings, or to watch the sunset over the same desert that inspired generations of artists and builders. Those visitors often arrive expecting to see famous monuments, yet many leave remembering something much quieter. They remember the stillness of the landscape, the warm light reflecting from ancient stone, and the feeling of standing in a place where human history stretches farther back than the imagination can easily grasp. Ancient Egypt encourages us to slow down and recognize that every civilization, including our own, is only one chapter in a much longer human story. The achievements we admire today were built through patience, cooperation, curiosity, and the willingness to think beyond a single lifetime. Those timeless qualities continue to connect us with the people who once lived beside the Nile as the evening gently fades into night and the constellations shine once more above the silent pyramids. Let the peaceful spirit of this ancient land remain with you. May the calm river, the endless desert, and the enduring legacy of Egypt remind you that while time never stops moving, the greatest stories are never truly forgotten. They simply wait quietly and patiently for the next listener to discover them again. Perhaps the greatest reason ancient Egypt continues to capture our imagination is that it allows us to look both backward and forward at the same time. When we study its history, we are not simply learning about people who lived thousands of years ago. We are also learning about ourselves. The questions the Egyptians asked are many of the same questions people still ask today. How can a society remain strong? What should we leave behind for future generations? How do we balance tradition with change? And what gives a human life lasting meaning? Their answers were shaped by the world around them, by the dependable waters of the Nile, the endless desert, and the brilliant stars that filled the night sky. Yet beneath those ancient beliefs was a universal hope that every generation understands, the hope that our efforts will matter long after we are gone. The Egyptians planted trees whose shade they might never enjoy, carved monuments they knew would take decades to complete, and recorded knowledge for readers they would never meet. That willingness to think beyond a single lifetime became one of the defining strengths of their civilization. Even today, scientists continue uncovering forgotten corners of Egypt that challenge what we thought we already knew. New burial chambers are found beneath the sand. Hidden inscriptions reveal the names of officials lost to history, and advanced technology allows researchers to examine ancient structures without causing damage. Every discovery adds another small piece to an enormous puzzle that has been assembled for centuries but is still incomplete. That is one of the remarkable things about history. No matter how much we learn, there is always another question waiting to be answered. The ancient Egyptians could never have imagined satellites orbiting above the earth or computers, translating their inscriptions in seconds. Yet through those modern inventions, their voices continue to speak across thousands of years. As the quiet night settles over the Valley of the Kings once more, imagine the stars reflecting softly upon the waters of the Nile. The great temples stand peacefully beneath the moonlight, their towering columns casting long shadows across the ancient stone. Somewhere in the distance, a gentle breeze moves through the palm trees, just as it has for countless generations. Nothing feels rushed here. The river flows at its own timeless pace, reminding us that the greatest achievements are often created slowly, through patience and persistence rather than haste. Ancient Egypt teaches us that civilizations are remembered not only for their power, but also for the wisdom they leave behind. Their legacy is written not just in pyramids and monuments, but in the enduring belief that knowledge should be preserved, beauty should be created, and every generation has a responsibility to pass something meaningful to the next. With that peaceful thought, allow the sounds of the ancient Nile to fade gently into the distance, carrying with them the final echoes of one of humanity's most extraordinary civilizations, a story that continues flowing through history as steadily as the river that gave it life. As we take our final peaceful walk through the world of ancient Egypt, imagine that the desert has become completely quiet. The heat of the day has faded, the evening air is gentle, and the sky above is filled with countless stars stretching from one horizon to the other. Somewhere beyond the dark silhouette of the pyramids, the Nile continues its endless journey, carrying fresh water north just as it has for thousands upon thousands of years. It flowed before the first villages appeared, before the first pharaoh wore a crown, and it still flows today, connecting every chapter of Egypt's extraordinary history. That simple river made one of humanity's greatest civilizations possible, proving that even the mightiest kingdoms often begin with something as quiet and dependable as flowing water. If we could step back in time for just a single evening, we would not necessarily find ourselves standing beside a famous king or watching the construction of a pyramid. Instead, we might see ordinary families gathered outside their homes after a long day's work. Children would laugh while chasing one another through narrow streets. Bakers would prepare bread for the following morning. Fishermen would repair their nets beside the river, and craftsmen would carefully place their tools aside until sunrise returned. Priests might finish the last prayers inside temple walls while the scent of incense drifted gently into the warm night air. Life in ancient Egypt was filled with routines that repeated day after day, season after season, generation after generation. Those simple routines became the foundation upon which one of history's most remarkable civilizations was built. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson Egypt leaves behind. Extraordinary history is often created through ordinary lives. Every stone placed upon a monument, every field carefully planted beside the Nile, every page written by a patient scribe, and every lesson taught from parent to child slowly became part of something much larger than any individual could ever see. None of those people knew their civilization would still be admired thousands of years later, yet their dedication ensured that it would be. Today, whenever someone gazes upon the pyramids, studies hieroglyphs, or sails along the Nile, they become connected to that incredible chain of human history. So, as this peaceful journey finally reaches its quiet conclusion, let your imagination remain beside the timeless river for just a little while longer. Picture the stars shining brightly above the silent desert, the great pyramids standing patiently beneath the night sky, and the calm waters of the Nile flowing onward without beginning or end. The pharaohs may be gone, the temples may have grown old, and the voices of the ancient world may have faded into history, but their legacy continues to live wherever curiosity, learning, and wonder are found. Thank you for joining this gentle journey through ancient Egypt. May its timeless beauty, quiet wisdom, and enduring story stay with you long after tonight, bringing a sense of peace as you slowly drift into a restful and refreshing sleep. And now, before we quietly leave the world of ancient Egypt behind, take a final moment to appreciate just how extraordinary this civilization truly was. More than 5,000 years have passed since the first communities settled beside the Nile, yet their story continues to reach across time with remarkable clarity. Few places on Earth allow us to stand face to face with structures built so long ago that even the ancient Romans considered them ancient. That incredible sense of continuity reminds us that history is not something distant or disconnected from our own lives. It is a long conversation between generations, each one leaving behind ideas, discoveries, and achievements for the next to inherit. The Egyptians understood this better than most. They believed that remembering the past was essential for building the future, and they carefully preserved their traditions through writing, architecture, religion, and education. Because of that dedication, we are still able to learn from them today. Imagine the countless mornings that began along the Nile. The rising sun painted the river with golden light as farmers walked toward their fields, merchants loaded their boats, and priests welcomed another day inside magnificent temples. For the people living there, these moments were ordinary, repeated so often that they must have seemed timeless. Yet together they formed the rhythm of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. Every harvest strengthened the kingdom. Every lesson taught by a scribe preserved knowledge. And every carefully carved block added another piece to monuments that would one day astonish the world. No single person built ancient Egypt. It was created through the quiet efforts of millions of individuals across dozens of generations, each contributing something meaningful before passing their knowledge to those who followed. Perhaps that is why Egypt continues to inspire people from every corner of the world. Its story reminds us that greatness is rarely achieved quickly. It grows patiently through persistence, cooperation, and the willingness to think beyond one's own lifetime. The pyramids did not rise in a day, and the civilization itself was shaped over centuries by people who simply did their work with care and purpose. Even now, as modern cities rise and technology advances at incredible speed, the silent monuments beside the Nile encourage us to slow down and remember that some of the most meaningful accomplishments are those built gradually, one careful step at a time. As the stars continue shining above the peaceful desert and the gentle waters of the Nile flow toward the sea, let this final image remain with you: a quiet river, endless golden sands, towering pyramids standing against the night sky, and a civilization whose voice still echoes after thousands of years. Though the age of the pharaohs has long since passed, the lessons of ancient Egypt continue to endure, reminding us that curiosity, wisdom, patience, and the desire to leave the world better than we found it are treasures that never fade. With that calm reflection, our journey through the timeless land of ancient Egypt finally comes to its peaceful and well-deserved rest. As the last chapter of our peaceful journey settles gently into place, there is one enduring truth that ancient Egypt leaves with us. No civilization, no matter how magnificent, can survive forever. But the ideas it creates can travel far beyond the people who first imagined them. The ancient Egyptians understood that every generation inherited a responsibility from those who came before. They repaired canals dug by their ancestors, worshipped in temples built centuries earlier, and taught children the same skills that had shaped their society for countless generations. In doing so, they created an unbroken chain of knowledge that stretched across more than 3,000 years. That continuity is one of the greatest achievements in human history. While many kingdoms rose quickly and disappeared just as fast, Egypt endured because its people valued stability, learning, and cooperation above all else. Today, when visitors stand before the Great Pyramid or walk through the towering columns of Karnak, they often fall silent without realizing why. It is not only the size of the monuments that inspires awe, it is the realization that every stone was placed by human hands. Someone measured it, someone carved it, someone transported it across the Nile, and someone carefully positioned it exactly where it remains today. Those workers never expected to become famous. Most of their names have disappeared forever, yet their efforts became part of something greater than themselves. Their lives remind us that history is built not only by rulers, but by ordinary people who perform extraordinary work with patience and dedication. Ancient Egypt also teaches us to respect the passage of time. Thousands of years may sound impossible to imagine, yet the pyramids have quietly witnessed every one of them. They stood while new empires appeared, while languages changed, while explorers crossed oceans, and while the modern world slowly took shape. Throughout all those centuries, the desert winds continued to blow. The stars continued their familiar paths across the night sky, and the Nile continued flowing toward the sea. Nature carried on with its timeless rhythm, gently reminding humanity that we are only small travelers within a much larger story. Perhaps that is the most peaceful lesson of all. Every generation adds a single page to the long history of our world before, passing the story to those who come next. The ancient Egyptians wrote their pages with stone, papyrus, art, and imagination. We read those pages today with admiration, grateful that they cared enough to preserve their knowledge for people they would never meet. And somewhere far in the future, others may look back upon our own time with the same curiosity. So, as the moon rises once more above the quiet sands of Egypt and the gentle waters of the Nile reflect the stars overhead, let your thoughts become as calm as the ancient river itself. Imagine the great pyramids standing peacefully beneath the endless night, unchanged by the passing centuries, watching over the land where one of humanity's greatest civilizations was born. Their silent presence reminds us that while every life is temporary, kindness, knowledge, creativity, and perseverance have the power to endure across generations. With that final peaceful reflection, our long journey through ancient Egypt reaches its true and gentle conclusion, leaving only the quiet whisper of the Nile and the timeless beauty of a civilization that will continue to inspire the world for centuries yet to come. As we prepare to leave ancient Egypt behind, imagine the first light of a new morning slowly spreading across the desert. The sky changes from deep blue to soft gold, and the tops of the pyramids catch the sunlight before anything else. The Nile glitters quietly as birds begin another day above its calm waters. Thousands of years ago, people witnessed this same sunrise and believed it marked the victory of light over darkness. For them, every new day was a reminder that life continued, that the river would keep flowing, and that hope always returned with the dawn. Perhaps that is why ancient Egypt has never truly disappeared from human memory. Its monuments are impressive, but its greatest gift is the feeling it leaves behind. It reminds us to slow down, to appreciate the passing of time, and to recognize that even the smallest actions can become part of a much greater story. A single stone may seem insignificant on its own, yet millions of carefully placed stones created wonders that still stand after thousands of years. In the same way, every ordinary day of work, learning, kindness, and perseverance helped build one of history's most extraordinary civilizations. As the gentle breeze moves across the desert for another timeless morning, the pyramids remain exactly where they have always been, watching over the Nile in quiet silence. They ask for nothing, yet they continue teaching everyone who visits that true greatness is measured not only by power, but by what endures long after we are gone. With that peaceful thought, allow your mind to drift gently away from the ancient world, carrying with it the calm beauty of Egypt, the endless rhythm of the Nile, and the quiet wisdom of a civilization whose story will continue inspiring people for generations still to come. As our peaceful journey through ancient Egypt gently reaches its final pages, let us pause for one last quiet reflection. History often feels like a collection of distant names and forgotten dates, but Egypt reminds us that the past was once the present for millions of ordinary people. Every child who learned to write with a reed pen, every farmer who waited patiently for the Nile to flood, every craftsperson who shaped a simple clay pot, and every family who gathered together after sunset, believed they were simply living another ordinary day. None of them could have imagined that thousands of years later their lives would still be remembered and admired across the world. That is the remarkable power of history. It transforms everyday moments into lasting memories. The laughter of children playing beside the river, the sound of wooden boats gliding across calm water, the smell of fresh bread baking in village ovens, and the quiet prayers whispered inside great temples have all disappeared with time. Yet through archaeology, writing, and careful study, we can still catch small echoes of those moments. They remind us that beneath the crowns of pharaohs and the towering pyramids lived real people whose hopes, fears, and dreams were not so different from our own. Perhaps the greatest lesson ancient Egypt offers is patience. Nothing truly extraordinary was built in a single day. Every monument required years of planning. Every harvest depended on seasons that could not be rushed. And every generation added another small chapter to a civilization that endured for more than 3,000 years. The Egyptians understood that lasting achievements come from steady effort, rather than hurried ambition. Their world moved at the pace of the Nile itself, calm, dependable, and constant. As the stars slowly brighten above the desert one final time, imagine the great pyramids standing silently beneath the night sky. The warm sand has cooled, the breeze carries only the gentle sound of the river, and the ancient monuments cast long shadows across the valley. They have witnessed countless sunsets and sunrises, the rise and fall of kingdoms, and the passing of thousands of generations. Yet they remain not as symbols of power alone, but as reminders of what humanity can accomplish through vision, cooperation, and perseverance. Thank you for taking this slow journey into one of the world's greatest civilizations. As the timeless waters of the Nile continue their endless path toward the sea, let your thoughts become just as calm and unhurried. Leave behind the noise of the modern world for a little while longer, and carry with you the quiet beauty, enduring wisdom, and peaceful spirit of ancient Egypt as you gently drift into a deep and restful sleep. Even after all this time, ancient Egypt continues to offer something that few civilizations can. It gives us a sense of quiet perspective. In our modern world, where everything seems to move faster each year, the story of Egypt reminds us that the greatest accomplishments often require patience measured not in days or months, but in generations. A temple was not built for one festival. A canal was not dug for a single season. A monument was not designed to impress only those who were alive at the time. Instead, the Egyptians created with the future in mind, believing that their work should continue serving people long after they themselves had returned to the earth. That remarkable way of thinking helped shape a civilization whose influence has lasted for thousands of years. If we could quietly wander through an Egyptian village at dusk, we would likely discover that life felt surprisingly peaceful. Smoke would rise gently from small cooking fires as evening meals were prepared. Families would gather together after the day's work, sharing stories while children listened with curiosity. Nearby, the Nile would reflect the fading colors of the sky, and fishermen would slowly return home with the day's catch. The sounds of hammers striking stone would finally grow silent. Temple doors would close until morning, and the desert would begin cooling beneath the first appearance of the stars. It was a world that respected natural rhythms, allowing each day to begin and end with calm purpose. Perhaps that is why ancient Egypt still feels so timeless. It reminds us that while technology changes, the human experience remains remarkably familiar. People still search for meaning, hope for better tomorrows, care deeply for their families, and dream of leaving behind something worthwhile. The Egyptians expressed those hopes through monuments, art, literature, and faith. We express them in different ways today, yet the desire itself has never changed. As the moon climbs higher above the quiet sands, imagine the Great Pyramid, standing exactly as it has through countless nights before this one. It has watched civilizations appear and disappear, witnessed explorers, scholars, and travelers arrive from every corner of the world, and remained unmoved by the passing centuries. Its silent presence reminds us that while time never stands still, the greatest achievements can continue inspiring humanity long after their creators are gone. So let the gentle flow of the Nile carry away the final thoughts of this journey. Leave behind the noise of the present and rest for a moment beside one of history's most extraordinary landscapes. In the peaceful silence of ancient Egypt, surrounded by endless desert, brilliant stars, and timeless stone, we find not only the story of a remarkable civilization, but also a quiet reminder that curiosity, wisdom, patience, and kindness are treasures that never grow old. As our final reflections continue, imagine that the world has become completely still. The warm desert wind has settled. The Nile moves so gently that it almost looks like polished glass, and the stars above shine with the same quiet brilliance that guided Egyptian travelers thousands of years ago. Somewhere in the distance, the outline of the pyramid stands against the night sky, unchanged through the passing of countless generations. They have watched kingdoms rise, witnessed languages evolve, and remained standing while history unfolded around them. Their silence is not empty. It is filled with the memories of everyone who once walked beneath their shadow. Ancient Egypt reminds us that every civilization is more than its monuments. It is the collection of millions of ordinary lives woven together across centuries. Somewhere, a young apprentice proudly completed his first carving. A farmer celebrated a successful harvest after the Nile's flood waters receded. A mother sang softly as her child drifted to sleep. A scribe carefully copied another line of text, hoping the words would survive for generations to come. None of these moments seemed extraordinary at the time, yet together they became the foundation of one of the most admired civilizations in history. The Egyptians believed that harmony existed when people lived in balance with nature, with one another, and with the world around them. That idea shaped the way they farmed, governed, worshipped, and built their cities. Even their greatest monuments reflected this search for balance, carefully aligned with the sun, the stars, and the cardinal directions. It was as though they wished to remind future generations that human achievement becomes truly meaningful when it exists in harmony with the natural world. Today, visitors often arrive expecting to be amazed by enormous pyramids and magnificent temples. Those sights never disappoint. But many travelers discover that the greatest impression comes from something much quieter. It is the feeling of standing in a place where time seems to slow down, watching the Nile flow at sunset, hearing the wind move gently across the sand, and realizing that these same scenes were witnessed by people thousands of years ago creates a rare connection between past and present. Very few places on Earth offer such an experience. As our peaceful journey continues toward its final moments, let that image remain in your thoughts. A calm river reflecting the stars, ancient stone glowing softly beneath the moonlight, and a civilization whose greatest legacy was not simply what it built, but what it taught the world about patience, knowledge, resilience, and the enduring power of human imagination. Long after the last pharaoh was gone, those lessons continued their own quiet journey through history, reaching us today just as steadily as the timeless waters of the Nile continue their endless path toward the sea. As we linger for a few final moments in the land of ancient Egypt, it becomes easier to understand why this civilization has never faded from the world's imagination. Long after the last hieroglyph was carved into temple walls and the final pharaoh disappeared into history, the spirit of Egypt continued to live through the questions it inspired. Every generation has looked toward the pyramids and wondered not only how they were built, but why people devoted so much of their lives to creating something that would outlast them. The answer may be simpler than it first appears. The Egyptians believed that a meaningful life was one connected to something greater than oneself. Whether tending a field beside the Nile, carving a statue for a temple, or carefully recording history on papyrus, Each person contributed to a civilization that they hoped would remain strong for generations yet unborn. If we could quietly walk through one of Egypt's ancient cities on a peaceful evening, we would notice that life moved with a gentle rhythm. Merchants finished their trading before sunset. Craftsmen carefully stored away their tools, and families gathered together to enjoy the cooler hours after the heat of the day. Lamps filled with oil cast a warm glow through homes built from mud brick, while the scent of freshly baked bread drifted through narrow streets. Far beyond the city, the desert stretched into silence beneath a sky crowded with brilliant stars. Those same constellations still shine above Egypt today, reminding us that while human history changes constantly, the heavens remain a steady companion across the centuries. Perhaps that timeless sky explains why the Egyptians were such careful observers of the natural world. They watched the rising of particular stars to predict the flooding of the Nile, measured the changing seasons with remarkable accuracy, and built temples aligned with important moments in the solar year. Their understanding of nature was not simply practical. It was deeply connected to their sense of wonder. Every sunrise represented renewal, every successful harvest inspired gratitude, and every peaceful evening offered another reminder that life followed patterns far older than any kingdom. As our journey continues toward its quiet farewell, let that feeling stay with you. Imagine the moonlight resting gently upon the ancient stones, the calm waters of the Nile flowing without haste, and the desert carrying only the soft whisper of the evening breeze. In that peaceful landscape, the achievements of ancient Egypt no longer feel distant or mysterious. They feel deeply human. They remind us that the greatest civilizations are built through patience, shared purpose, and the quiet determination of ordinary people whose lives, though long past, continue to illuminate the world thousands of years later. As the peaceful silence of ancient Egypt surrounds us one last time, imagine sitting beside the Nile just after sunset. The day's warmth has faded, leaving behind a cool evening. Breeze that gently moves through the reeds along the riverbank. The sky above slowly fills with stars, brighter than almost anywhere else in the ancient world. Without the lights of modern cities, the heavens stretch endlessly from horizon to horizon, inspiring wonder just as they did thousands of years ago. Egyptian priests, astronomers, and the travelers all looked toward these same stars, believing they revealed the order of the universe and helped guide both the living and the dead. To them, the night sky was not empty darkness, but a familiar companion, filled with stories, meaning, and hope. Nearby, the great temples rest in quiet silence. Their towering columns cast long shadows beneath the moonlight, while carvings on their walls continue telling stories that have survived for centuries. Although many of the bright colors have faded with time, it is easy to imagine how magnificent these places once appeared. Walls painted in rich reds, deep blues, brilliant greens, and shining gold reflected the sunlight during the day and glowed softly beneath flickering oil lamps at night. The air would have carried the fragrance of incense, accompanied by the gentle sound of prayers echoing through vast stone halls. Those voices have long since disappeared. Yet the buildings themselves continue standing with remarkable dignity, preserving the memory of the people who created them. As we reflect upon everything this civilization achieved, perhaps its greatest accomplishment was not any single monument or treasure, but the sense of continuity it maintained across thousands of years. Generation after generation worked to preserve knowledge, protect traditions, and improve the world they inherited. Parents taught children, masters trained apprentices, and experienced scribes patiently passed their skills to younger students. Each generation became a bridge between the past and the future, ensuring that wisdom was never lost. That quiet dedication allowed Egypt to flourish for far longer than almost any other civilization in history. Now allow your thoughts to become as peaceful as the slow-moving Nile itself. Picture the desert stretching endlessly beneath the moon, the pyramids standing in silent confidence, and the gentle current carrying the reflections of countless stars toward the distant sea. In that timeless landscape there is no hurry and no noise, only the calm reminder that history is not merely about the past. It is a living connection between generations, carried forward by stories, memories, and the enduring curiosity that inspires us to keep exploring the remarkable journey of humanity. As the night grows deeper, let the quiet beauty of ancient Egypt gently fade into your dreams, leaving behind only peace, wonder, and the comforting rhythm of the eternal Nile. As our final moments beside the Nile become quieter still, imagine that the night has reached its deepest hour. The desert is peaceful, the air is cool, and the only sound is the gentle movement of water flowing steadily toward the sea. Above you, thousands of stars shine with extraordinary clarity, just as they did for the ancient Egyptians thousands of years ago. Somewhere in the distance, the silhouette of the Great Pyramid rises against the night sky, calm and unmoving, exactly as it has through the passing of countless generations. It asks for nothing, speaks no words, and yet continues telling one of the greatest stories in human history. If these ancient stones could speak, they would tell stories far beyond the lives of kings. They would remember children laughing beside the river, merchants greeting travelers from distant lands, musicians performing during joyful festivals, and craftsmen patiently shaping stone with tools that seem simple by modern standards. They would remember years of plentiful harvests when the Nile overflowed exactly as expected, and difficult seasons when the river failed to rise high enough, forcing communities to rely upon one another through every moment of celebration and every period of hardship. The civilization endured because its people understood the value of working together. Perhaps that quiet spirit of cooperation is the true foundation upon which ancient Egypt was built. The pyramids were not created by a single pair of hands, nor were the temples, canals, or cities. They were the result of thousands of people sharing knowledge, effort, and determination across many generations. Every farmer growing grain, every sailor guiding a boat along the Nile, every builder lifting another block of stone, and every scribe recording another page of history became part of a story much greater than themselves. Without realizing it, they created a legacy that would continue, inspiring the world for thousands of years. As you imagine the peaceful valley beneath the moonlight one final time, notice how little nature has changed. The Nile still follows its ancient course. The stars still cross the sky each night. The desert still stretches beyond the horizon with quiet dignity. Human civilizations may rise and fall, but these timeless rhythms continue without hurry, gently reminding us that we are only one small part of a much larger story. Ancient Egypt teaches us that while our lives are brief, the kindness we show, the knowledge we share, and the things we create with patience may continue long after we are gone. So let your thoughts drift slowly across the calm waters of the Nile, past the silent temples and beneath the watchful pyramids, until even the echoes of history grow soft and distant. May this remarkable civilization leave you not only with admiration for its achievements, but also with a peaceful appreciation for the quiet strength of patience, curiosity, and perseverance. And as the stars continue shining over the ancient desert, let the timeless beauty of Egypt gently carry you into a deep, calm and restful sleep. As the peaceful night continues across the ancient land of Egypt, let your imagination wander one final time. Along the quiet banks of the Nile, the river reflects the moon like polished silver, and a soft breeze carries the cool scent of fresh water through the reeds. In the distance, the pyramids stand in complete silence, their enormous stones warmed by countless days beneath the sun and cooled again beneath thousands of nights like this one. They have watched seasons come and go, seen rulers crowned and kingdoms transformed, yet they remain exactly where they have always been, patiently keeping their place within the story of humanity. It is remarkable to think that the people who built these monuments never expected the modern world. They never imagined airplanes crossing the sky above their temples or visitors arriving from every corner of the earth to admire their achievements. To them, tomorrow was far more important than thousands of years in the future. They worried about the next harvest, the health of their families, the level of the Nile, and whether the coming season would bring prosperity or hardship. Those ordinary concerns connect us to them more than any treasure ever could. Across the vast distance of time, we discover that people have always hoped for safety, happiness, and a better future for those they loved. As archaeologists continue uncovering forgotten tombs and hidden settlements, the story of ancient Egypt quietly grows richer with every discovery. A broken pottery bowl, a child's wooden toy, an old sandal, or a faded letter can sometimes reveal more about daily life than a chamber filled with gold. These simple objects remind us that history belongs to everyone, not only to kings and queens. Every person who lived beside the Nile contributed something to the civilization we admire today, whether through farming, building, teaching, sailing, weaving, or simply caring for the next generation. Perhaps that is the most comforting thought we can carry with us. The greatest civilizations are not created by extraordinary individuals alone, but by millions of ordinary people whose kindness, patience, knowledge, and determination slowly shape the future. Ancient Egypt became one of humanity's brightest achievements because countless lives were connected by a shared purpose and a deep respect for the world around them. Now the night has become wonderfully still. The stars continue their slow journey overhead. The desert rests in peaceful silence, and the Nile flows onward without haste, just as it always has. Let the calm beauty of this timeless landscape remain with you for a little while longer. Allow the quiet rhythm of the river, the enduring strength of the pyramids, and the gentle wisdom of the ancient world to settle your thoughts. As our journey finally reaches its resting place, may the story of ancient Egypt remind you that while time carries every generation forward, the greatest acts of curiosity, compassion, and creativity never truly disappear. They continue flowing through history, as constant and peaceful as the eternal waters of the Nile. As our gentle journey reaches what feels like its final horizon, there is one last scene worth imagining. The sun has not yet risen, and the entire valley of the Nile rests beneath a blanket of quiet blue light. The desert seems almost endless, untouched except for the timeless outlines of pyramids, temples, and distant palm trees. The air is cool, carrying the faint scent of the river that has sustained life here since the earliest days of civilization. It is in moments like this that ancient Egypt feels less like a chapter in a history book and more like a living memory, patiently waiting for anyone willing to slow down and listen. The people who once walked this land never knew they would become part of one of the greatest stories ever told. They simply woke each morning and carried out the tasks that life placed before them. Farmers tended their fields, craftsmen shaped stone and wood with remarkable care. Potters turned wet clay into beautiful vessels, and scribes carefully filled sheets of papyrus with records they hoped would preserve knowledge for the future. Parents taught their children the traditions they had learned from their own parents, believing that wisdom was one of the greatest gifts they could pass forward. These quiet routines, repeated day after day and century after century, slowly built a civilization whose influence would reach far beyond its own lifetime. Looking back today, it becomes clear that ancient Egypt was never truly defined by gold or monuments alone. Its greatest strength was its ability to create order from uncertainty. Every year the Nile flooded, and every year the people adapted to its changing waters with patience and experience. They understood that nature could not be controlled, only respected. That lesson shaped their architecture, their religion, their calendar, and even the way they viewed life itself. Instead of rushing against time, they learned to move with its rhythm, trusting that every season had its purpose. Perhaps that quiet philosophy is why Egypt still feels so peaceful to imagine. The civilization reminds us that life does not always need to move quickly. Great achievements are often the result of countless small efforts carried out with consistency and care. A single stone seems insignificant until it becomes part of a pyramid. A single written line seems ordinary until it preserves history for thousands of years. A single act of kindness may appear small, yet it can echo through generations in ways we may never witness ourselves. As the first light of dawn finally begins to touch the horizon, the stars slowly disappear one by one, making room for another day above the ancient land. The Nile continues flowing exactly as it always has, never stopping, never hurrying, quietly connecting the past with the present. The pyramids stand peacefully beneath the growing light, unchanged in their silent purpose. They no longer belong only to Egypt. They belong to the shared story of humanity, reminding us that curiosity, patience, knowledge, and imagination are treasures more enduring than stone itself. And with that final peaceful image resting in your thoughts, let the calm spirit of ancient Egypt gently accompany you into a night of deep, quiet, and restorative sleep. As our peaceful exploration of ancient Egypt slowly comes to its final moments, let yourself imagine one last quiet morning beside the Nile. A thin layer of mist rises gently from the River as the first golden light of dawn spreads across the water. Palm trees sway softly in the cool breeze. Birds begin their morning songs, and the desert, which seemed endless beneath the stars only moments ago, slowly awakens beneath the warm light of the sun. In the distance, the pyramids stand exactly as they have for thousands of years, calm, silent, and patient. They do not hurry, they do not change, and perhaps that is why they continue to inspire such deep admiration. They remind us that the greatest achievements are often those created with time, care, and unwavering dedication. It is fascinating to remember that ancient Egypt lasted for more than 3,000 years. Think of how many generations lived and passed during that extraordinary span of history. Grandparents shared stories with grandchildren. Teachers passed knowledge to eager students, and skilled craftsmen patiently trained young apprentices who would one day continue their work. Every generation inherited the wisdom of those before it while adding something new for those who would follow. That quiet chain of learning became one of Egypt's greatest strengths. It allowed knowledge to survive through changing rulers, difficult times, and centuries of transformation. Even today, we continue adding new pages to the story of ancient Egypt. Researchers uncover forgotten villages hidden beneath drifting sand, restore faded paintings inside ancient tombs, and carefully preserve monuments so future generations can experience the same sense of wonder we feel today. Every discovery reminds us that history is never completely finished. Somewhere beneath the vast Egyptian desert, another secret may still be waiting patiently for the right moment to be revealed. Perhaps another temple remains untouched. Another collection of papyrus scrolls rests safely beneath the earth, or another forgotten tomb quietly guards its story after thousands of years of silence. As you picture the peaceful Nile one final time, notice how naturally everything seems to exist together. The flowing river, the fertile fields, the endless desert, the towering pyramids, and the brilliant sky above all form a single timeless landscape. It is a place where human determination and the beauty of nature have remained connected for thousands of years. Long after empires rose and fell across the world, the Nile continued its endless journey, gently reminding every generation that while people come and go, the story of humanity continues without end. Now the morning light grows brighter. The stars have disappeared beyond the blue sky, and another quiet day begins over the ancient land of Egypt. As our journey finally reaches its peaceful conclusion, carry with you the calm rhythm of the Nile, the quiet strength of the pyramids, and the enduring wisdom of a civilization that never truly vanished. It lives on in every stone, every inscription, every discovery, and in the curiosity of everyone who continues to wonder about the remarkable people who transformed a narrow river valley into one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. May that quiet sense of wonder remain with you, bringing peace, reflection, and restful sleep long after our journey has gently come to an end. As we bring this peaceful journey to its gentle conclusion, there is one final thought that ancient Egypt quietly offers to every traveler. Great civilizations are not remembered only because of what they built, but because of the ideas they left behind. The pyramids remind us of determination. The temples remind us of faith. The hieroglyphs remind us of the importance of preserving knowledge. And the endless flow of the Nile reminds us that life is always moving forward. Together, these symbols tell a story that is far greater than any single ruler or monument. They tell the story of people who believed that their work should serve not only themselves, but also the generations yet to come. Imagine taking one last slow walk beside the river. The morning sun has climbed higher into the sky, filling the valley with warm golden light. Fishermen guide their small boats across the calm water. Birds circle overhead, and the desert stretches peacefully toward the horizon. The pyramids stand in quiet silence, their shadows growing shorter as the day begins. Nothing feels rushed. Everything seems to exist in perfect balance, just as the ancient Egyptians hoped their world would remain. Perhaps that quiet balance is the greatest gift this civilization leaves behind. In a world that often feels fast and uncertain, ancient Egypt reminds us to value patience, to respect the passage of time, and to remember that lasting achievements are built through countless small acts of care and dedication. Finally, before we allow the story of ancient Egypt to fade gently into the quiet of the night, take one last moment to appreciate how extraordinary it is that this civilization still feels so alive. Thousands of years have passed since the last pharaoh ruled along the Nile, yet the lessons of Egypt continue to travel across time. Every carved inscription, every weathered temple, every carefully preserved mummy, and every towering pyramid reminds us that human curiosity has always been one of our greatest strengths. The people of ancient Egypt looked toward the stars with wonder, measured the changing seasons with remarkable care, and believed that knowledge was something precious enough to preserve forever. Because of that belief, their voices can still be heard today through the monuments and writings they left behind. Perhaps the greatest mystery of ancient Egypt is not hidden beneath the sand or sealed inside an unopened tomb. Perhaps the greatest mystery is how a civilization so ancient can still make us pause, reflect, and imagine life from thousands of years ago with such clarity. It encourages us to slow down, to notice the quiet beauty of the natural world, and to remember that every generation is only one small chapter in the much longer story of humanity. Just as the Nile continued flowing through every triumph and every hardship, life itself moves steadily forward, carrying with it the memories of those who came before. Now imagine the evening settling once more across the valley. The warm colors of sunset slowly disappear, replaced by a sky filled with countless stars. The desert becomes silent, the river glides peacefully through the darkness, and the pyramids remain standing beneath the moonlight exactly as they have for centuries. There is no rush here, only the comforting rhythm of time moving gently onward. As your thoughts become quieter, let this timeless landscape remain in your imagination for just a little while longer. May the calm waters of the Nile, the endless desert, and the enduring spirit of ancient Egypt remind you that while civilizations may rise and fall, the wisdom, curiosity, and hope they leave behind can continue inspiring people for thousands of years. And with that final peaceful image, allow yourself to drift into a deep, restful sleep, carrying the quiet echoes of ancient Egypt gently into your dreams. As the final quiet moments of our journey unfold, let yourself simply rest. Beside the timeless waters of the Nile, there is nothing more to build, nothing left to discover tonight. Only the peaceful awareness that you have traveled across thousands of years of human history. The same river that once carried wooden boats filled with grain now carries only our imagination as it drifts gently through one of the oldest landscapes on Earth. The desert stretches endlessly beneath the moon, unchanged by the passing centuries, while the pyramids continue their silent watch over the valley. They have seen storms pass, kingdoms rise, languages change, and generations come and go. Yet they remain calm, patient, and unshaken. Perhaps that quiet endurance is the greatest lesson ancient Egypt leaves behind. Time moves forward for everyone, but not everything is forgotten. The kindness shared within families, the knowledge passed from teacher to student, the careful work of skilled hands, and the determination to create something meaningful all have the power to outlive the people who first imagined them. The Egyptians understood this deeply. Every temple they raised, every inscription they carved, and every story they recorded was an act of hope, a message carried into the future for strangers they would never know. Tonight, we have become those strangers. We have walked through their cities, admired their achievements, listened to the echoes of their beliefs, and watched the Nile continue its endless journey just as it has for millennia. In doing so, we have been reminded that history is not merely about the distant past. It is a quiet conversation between generations, linking countless human lives together across the centuries. The ancient Egyptians have long since disappeared, yet through their curiosity, creativity, and perseverance, they continue to speak to us without saying a single word. Now the stars shine high above the desert, brighter than ever before. A gentle breeze moves across the sand, smoothing away the footprints of the day. The river flows without hurry, reflecting the moonlight as it disappears into the distance. There is no need to ask where the journey goes next, because the Nile has always known its path. Perhaps we can learn something from that gentle certainty. We do not need to rush through every moment of life. Sometimes it is enough simply to keep moving forward with patience, gratitude, and quiet purpose. As the peaceful landscape slowly fades into the darkness, let your thoughts become lighter with every passing breath. Imagine the great pyramids growing smaller on the horizon, the temples disappearing into the soft glow of moonlight, and the calm waters of the Nile carrying the final echoes of this remarkable civilization into the night. Thank you for sharing this long and gentle journey through ancient Egypt. May the timeless spirit of this extraordinary land remain with you, bringing calm, reflection, and peaceful dreams until the first light of morning quietly returns. As our long and peaceful journey through ancient Egypt gently approaches its final destination, imagine yourself sitting quietly upon a smooth stone overlooking the Nile as evening gives way to night once more. The water flows so calmly that it almost seems to stand still, reflecting thousands of stars scattered across the clear desert sky. A cool breeze moves softly through the palm trees, carrying only the quiet sounds of nature. Far away, the pyramids rest beneath the moonlight, their ancient stones glowing with a gentle silver light. They no longer feel like monuments built by strangers, After traveling together through thousands of years of history, they feel almost like old companions, patiently waiting for each new generation to arrive and wonder about the people who created them. There is something deeply comforting about knowing that while human lives are brief, our stories can continue far beyond us. The Egyptians understood this better than almost anyone. They believed that memory had great power, that names spoken aloud could live forever, and that every generation carried the responsibility of remembering those who came before. Although the language of the pharaohs is no longer spoken in daily life, their voices continue to reach us through the temples they built, the papyrus scrolls they wrote, and the remarkable works of art they left behind. Their civilization reminds us that history is not simply a record of the past. It is a bridge connecting countless generations, allowing people separated by thousands of years to learn from one another. As you slowly leave this ancient world behind, carry with you the peaceful rhythm of the Nile. Remember the patient builders who raised the pyramids, one stone at a time, the farmers who trusted the yearly floods, the scribes who carefully preserved knowledge, and the families who found happiness in simple moments beneath the same stars that shine above us today. Their world may seem distant, yet the hopes they carried were wonderfully familiar. They wished for peace, for prosperity, for healthy families, and for the chance to leave the world a little better than they found it. Now the night has become completely still. The desert rests in silence. The river continues its endless journey toward the sea, and the stars remain fixed above one of humanity's oldest civilizations. There is nothing more to add, nothing more to hurry toward, only the quiet understanding that some stories never truly end. They continue flowing gently through time, inspiring every new traveler who chooses to pause, listen, and remember. May the calm beauty of ancient Egypt remain with you long after this journey is over, bringing peaceful thoughts, gentle dreams, and a lasting appreciation for a civilization whose timeless spirit continues to shine as steadily as the stars above the eternal Nile. As we remain beside the timeless Nile for just a little while longer, let the quiet beauty of this ancient land settle gently into your thoughts. The night is calm, and the stars above seem almost close enough to touch. Their reflections shimmer softly upon the river, creating a peaceful scene that countless generations of Egyptians once admired. Long before clocks measured the hours, people here watched the movement of the stars to understand the seasons, to guide their journeys, and to celebrate the rhythm of the world around them. Every evening reminded them that although each day came to an end, another sunrise would always return. It is remarkable how much of Egypt's story has survived despite the passing of so much time. Empires have risen and disappeared, languages have changed, and entire cities have been built and rebuilt. Yet the spirit of ancient Egypt continues to feel familiar. Perhaps that is because it was never only about magnificent monuments. It was about people finding meaning in everyday life. A father teaching his son to steer a boat along the Nile, a mother weaving linen for her family, a mason carefully smoothing the surface of a limestone block, or a young student practicing hieroglyphs under the patient guidance of an experienced scribe. These quiet moments rarely appear in history books, yet together they form the true heart of the civilization. When archaeologists uncover another forgotten workshop or a simple family home buried beneath the sand, they are reminded that history is built from ordinary lives. A clay bowl with signs of daily use, a child's footprint preserved in dried mud, or a worn wooden tool tells us that the people of ancient Egypt laughed, worked, rested, and dreamed much as we do today. They celebrated births, mourned loved ones, gathered for festivals, and hoped their children would enjoy a better future. Across thousands of years, those hopes remain wonderfully familiar. As the cool night air drifts across the valley once more, imagine the gentle sound of reeds swaying beside the river, while the pyramids stand quietly beneath the stars. Nothing asks for attention here. There is only stillness, patience, and the comforting reminder that time moves at its own peaceful pace. The Nile has never hurried toward the sea, yet it has reached it every single day for thousands of years. In many ways, that quiet persistence became the greatest teacher of ancient Egypt. So let your thoughts become as calm as the ancient river itself. Allow the worries of the day to fade like distant footsteps, disappearing into the desert sand. Carry with you the timeless image of moonlight resting upon the pyramids, the gentle flow of the Nile beneath a sky filled with stars, and the quiet wisdom of a civilization that continues to remind the world that the most enduring legacies are built not through haste, but through patience, kindness, knowledge, and the steady passage of time. And so, as our long and peaceful journey through ancient Egypt gently reaches its final chapter, allow yourself one last quiet moment. Beside the eternal Nile, the river continues its endless journey beneath the soft glow of the stars, just as it did for the first farmers who settled along its fertile banks. More than 5,000 years ago, the pyramids stand silently against the night sky, their ancient stones holding the memories of countless generations who dreamed, worked, celebrated, and hoped for a better tomorrow. Though the voices of those people have long since faded into history, their legacy remains alive in every monument, every carved inscription, and every story that continues to be shared across the world. Perhaps that is the greatest gift ancient Egypt leaves behind. It reminds us that true greatness is not measured only by power or wealth, but by the ability to inspire those who come long after we are gone. The Egyptians built with patience, lived with purpose, and believed that knowledge was one of humanity's greatest treasures. Because of their dedication, we are still able to admire their achievements thousands of years later. Their civilization teaches us that kindness, curiosity, perseverance, and cooperation can leave marks upon history that last far longer than any single lifetime. Now imagine the first hint of dawn beginning to appear on the eastern horizon. The stars slowly fade one by one, and the sky fills with gentle shades of blue and gold. Birds awaken along the river. The breeze carries the scent of fresh water across the quiet valley, and the Nile continues flowing exactly as it always has, never rushing, never stopping, simply moving forward with calm determination. It has witnessed every chapter of Egypt's extraordinary story, and it will continue flowing long after we are gone, connecting the past, the present, and the future in one endless journey. As you leave this ancient world behind, carry with you its peaceful rhythm. Remember the quiet strength of the pyramids, the wisdom preserved within the temples, the gentle flow of the Nile, and the countless ordinary people whose lives together created one of the greatest civilizations in human history. Their story reminds us that even the smallest acts of patience, learning, and compassion can become part of something far greater than ourselves. Thank you for joining me on this relaxing journey through the timeless world of ancient Egypt. I hope these stories have brought you a sense of calm, wonder, and quiet reflection. Now, as the morning light slowly rises over the desert and the ancient land gently disappears into the distance, close your eyes, take a slow, peaceful breath, and let the timeless spirit of the Nile carry you into a deep, restful, and refreshing sleep. Good night, and until our next journey through history, sleep well.